I appreciate all the folks who came out to listen to what Eddie said and to take part in the conversation. Saddened that so many decided to speak and leave, but I appreciate those of you who stayed to hear the fulfillment of the conversation and also get some factual information. As for my comments on this issue, they're pretty widely known, that they've been published in the newspapers, put on my website, it's covered by the news media. But just to expand on it a little bit, my history is, or my family's history is, we are of Italian and Slavic descent. I am fifth generation American. I remember sitting at my grandmother's dinner table and her telling me the story about how my ancestors, or how my family, came to the United States through Ellis Island. They were poor. They were very poor. They had nothing. Unfortunately, as I understand the immigration standards that we set in this country, my family probably would not meet the standards of admissions into this country. Therefore, I would still be in Italy or Slovakia. I'm grateful that my family decided to immigrate into the United States when they did. And at that point in time, you came, you were held, you were screened, your name was taken. Not all the time was it accurately taken. There is some concern in my family that our last name may have been misspelled. There's an F in there we don't remember putting 4 or 5 generations ago. But they were allowed into this country. They had no support mechanism in place when they got here, except for their own will to create the best life that they could when they got here. And I appreciate them for that. I've heard a lot said about federal policy. Tea Party's been here to speak about their issues with federal policy as it relates to the border, and I share a lot of those concerns. We need a secure border. We need a proper immigration process. It needs to be reformed. So those folks who have currently no hope of coming into this country because they don't meet that standard of admission, they need to have a hope. If you give them no hope of ever being able to come into this country legally, what do you leave them with? However, these are all federal issues. Coming back here, we've heard about the medical state of the kids. I did go to the Juvenile Detention Center. It does reside within my district. I took the time and spoke to 5 of the children that are there. I was pleased to see that they, as a nurse, looked healthy, well taken care of. They had no complaints about the staff or how they were treated. And they were appreciative to the opportunity of just being there compared to the circumstances from which they fled. Locally, I'm led to ask this question of everybody. Who are we? Who are we as citizens of this country? Who are we as citizens of this county? And I can say that I've been on this board for almost 3 years. And overwhelmingly, what I have come across is an amazing hospitality by everybody that I've met. I've met a caring and respectful people, and every single one of them respect the rule of law. These children, whether adult or children, who came across illegally, yes, they broke the law. But we have to obey the law that governs how they are returned or placed. And while we will care for these children that are brought to us, we will be respectful of them while they are here. We will see to their needs. We will also obey the law and the process that is in place. I have a serious issue with the process in terms of the federal government, and that's where we need to demand reform. But here at home, we can't blame these kids. There is a plaque in bronze inside of the Statue of Liberty. Most everybody knows some of the words, but it's actually a poem. And there's much in it that goes to the core of what we are as a nation. We don't, that plaque says that we don't pick and choose who we want to come into this country. That plaque and that poem was placed there because it shows the core that we want anybody who is willing to come to this country to add to the fabric of who we are and to make a better life for themselves. That's what Ronald Reagan said was the shining city on a hill. That's why the Statue of Liberty holds a torch, because it's a light, and it says, you can come here. This is where hope is. This is where freedom lives. And it's not limited to those people who are able to get an education in the country they're coming from. If anything, that torch shines more brightly for those who do not have that education, who do not have a hope of anything better in the country that they live in. And they're looking for that opportunity. Fortunately, that light has dimmed because of our broken immigration policies. But I would like to believe that here in Augusta County, we still believe in what that plaque means. That we still believe in what that torch represents. That you can come here, that you can work hard, and you can create a life, no matter where you came from. I support what Pat Cofield has reviewed in terms of how we are handling this issue. We're not going to open a center exclusively for illegal immigrants. I do support continuing to use the building that we have in place to its capacity. If it involves renting to the federal government, so be it. And we will take care of and respect and see to the immediate needs of those that come here while obeying the law and the process that is in place.
I feel that I have for my whole adult life that we have an obligation to, our society has an obligation to those in the early phases of their life and those in the latter phases of their life. And anyone in between who has special needs who can't take care of themselves. This facility was built as a regional facility to take care of our local youth. At this point, we don't have that demand, and I think it was prudent on the fact of the management of and the board to look for outside youth that needed attention, generated revenue, and allows us to operate the facility efficiently. If we don't, if we do in the future have a need that we can no longer honor that contract because we have local needs, and I think that is still our primary responsibility and the reason the facility was built to begin with. But until that case, I will continue to support the federal use of that facility for the children that need care.
I think you have to recognize and you have to appreciate the fact that the Board of Juvenile Detention Center responsibly made decisions as far as when they were brought the opportunity or asked to help with the further center, or if, either as an advisory or running the different operations and house these children and take a bigger, participate a little greater into this current situation. They understood their mission, they respected their mission. Their responsibility is to the children in Augusta County, and I think that they have honored that. There is space still available, and they honored it. They are using that space through the federal program. These children, I don't think there's anybody here that's going to disagree at all that the system is in horrible, horrible shape, and that it needs to be repaired, and it needs attention, but that's not the children's fault. That's the people that we have elected, that's the people that are serving, that are making the decisions. It's not the children's fault. I cannot imagine, and I don't think most of us can, imagine the conditions that these people live in, that a parent would take their child, hand them to somebody, and say, please go. I have a 16-year-old son, and I think, many of y'all have children or grandchildren, and to send your child out and praying with every breath that you take, that child, when he gets to the other side, is going to be cared for in some manner. I think that it is the children that are collected, found, however you want to put them, I think they're the lucky ones. They go to a facility, there is a process that is being implemented. They are being either shipped back or they're going to be placed until their hearing can be held. That is the legal system. That is what we as a country have decided or elected to do at this time. But they're the lucky ones because they're not the children that are sitting in the corner of some alley in fear. They can go to bed at night, not worried about what's in the dark, what's going to attack them. These are children that do not have to worry about where their next food meal is coming from. They're not going through the garbage. They're not prostituting themselves or dealing with the drugs to find food and just to survive. So these are the lucky ones. I think that it's a big, big issue again because the border is an issue, but these children deserve the ability to put their head on a pillow at night and to know that they're going to be okay the next day. I think it's our responsibility to do, and we're dealing with just a small number of kids, and I think it's our responsibility to care for them while they are here in Augusta County. And what happens after that, we just pray that it will be in their best interest. But to put your child in that situation, that's got to be the most horrific thing that you can possibly imagine. These children deserve to have a little bit of comfort. So I do support the number that we have, being housed here in a humanitarian and respectful way.
It's easier to talk to people when you're on their side. It's not as easy when you don't agree with people. But it's always been my job to be honest with people, what I think, and they can judge me based on my thinking, my rationale, and do what they do once every 4 years. Fortunately, I've gotten a larger percentage every time I ran for office. There's people who like plain spoken folks. If you know me, I try to research things that come up to get to the core of it. How many of you here know William Wilberforce? That's who the law was named for. That is the genesis of the problem that you're addressing today. It's interesting that this law was passed the final month of George Bush's administration. He signed it on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. He ran as a compassionate consumer. This is probably the most compassionate thing he did. It was unanimously passed by the Senate. There were only 2 objections from the House of Representatives, 2 Republicans, one Jeff Flake, who's now a senator, one other fellow. It was not Bob Goodlatte. Bob Goodlatte supported this legislation. So it's out there. William Wilberforce was an abolitionist from England, 19th century, all right? And he was driven by Christian compassion. He had had a conversion, and he had been raised in the church in England, but he got fired. And so he wanted to do something about it. And at that time, he was one of the lords, one of the wealthiest people there. It was unbecoming of you to be emotional, to be fired up about something. I certainly wouldn't fit there. But they, so he did that. So this was his issue, was to abolish slavery. That's what he wanted to do. He was feisty at it, he passed laws, he got it done. But it bothers me that we had to go all the way back to 1879 to find somebody to be the model for the law. We didn't have anybody in the United States, somebody of recent times, who had stood up to stop slave trafficking, sex trafficking, that sort of thing. So this was an honorable attempt at fixing a problem. The problem is there's always unintended consequences. And if you don't think about them in the beginning, they bite you later on, you find out about it. And I think everybody's trying to get out of Washington. It was December 23rd, oh yeah, that's good, I was there. And so they didn't think it through. Because while they were thinking, and the reason for it is absolutely justified and right. You have these little girls sold into prostitution. You have these little boys made to work for prostitution. These kids can't live like kids, either out of fear of their lives. They're in poverty, abject poverty. So they created this law that says, if you come from one of these countries that doesn't border the United States, if you don't come from Mexico or Canada, certainly we got a big problem with Canada. There we go. So they put those two countries, they don't count. But if they come from these other places, we're going to give them due process. We're going to allow them to be part of the legal system of the United States. There's just about nothing better to have than the justice system of the United States. Because we go to the nth degree to make sure that we only incarcerate the bad guys. Sometimes we fail, but that's our mission. So that's what it was. In this country, everybody's entitled to a lawyer, but not everybody's entitled to a doctor. I know I say it better than that. So they get here, and where other illegal aliens come in, they're trying to avoid the border guards. They're trying to duck out. These people show up like Iraqi soldiers, surrendering. As soon as they get in here, they say, take me in. Because they were told that this is the system. You can go up there, and the system gets delayed, and so you're going to have an opportunity to live pretty well for a while. And some of the folks talked about what the parents must go through. Don't you think about that? That they scrimp and scrape forever to send their kids away and hoping that something better happens for them? I'm sure they never thought about using the money to educate them because, they have such fine schools there, they just need to go to a certain place. It's not like here. For goodness sakes, it's not like here. They're in a bad situation. We always go send mission groups down there, and people come back with these horror stories, and they're all touched by it, and we get away from it. We did our part. So these kids, looking for life, facing with things that they're looking for survival. It's a heck of a thing. The human spirit to survive is unstoppable. So they're going to come up here. So they come into this system. This was a law that was put in place. I didn't create it. Bob Goodlatte did. I wasn't part of it. But then it's our job. How do we deal with this situation? I was mainly touched. The folks from the Tea Party, I get it. I know what you're worried about. We all worry about it. But this is a unique situation. This is somewhat different. We got kids that are struggling. And they're being put in our arms. We do it better. We do do everything better in Augusta County than any place else. Thank you, Rockingham Rockbridge, for trusting us. But wait, they're going, if you're worried about your tax dollars, one lady said $250 in or $1,000 a day if you hire a private vendor. If they don't come here for that price, they're not going to get stopped. They're going to do the other thing. So we can care for these children. And it's helpful for our taxpayers. In a facility the taxpayers already pay and keep their costs down. You hear a lot in here about religion. And it's, you know, seems like the same people are driven by the same Bible, but take a lot of different perspectives on it. You know, my mother always wanted to rebuke people. And please don't put that in the paper. I'll get rebuked. But there's others that just want to hug people. My Christ hugs. My Christ looks out for the lepers. My Christ goes to the prison. My Christ tries to feed the 5,000 with it. There doesn't seem to be enough. So, something that is legal, something that is helpful, something that we can do better than other people, I think we ought to be about it. I'm a little disappointed by some of the frustration that folks have. Augusta County has been such a marvelous county. It's such marvelous people. They care about one another and aren't looking for fights. I was in high school in the 60s when, every day you watch the paper, Little Rock problems, Montgomery, Birmingham, Virginia, you had massive resistance. Bill Douglas shut down some schools and all that. Came a time for Augusta County to integrate. I was at Buffalo Gap. There was hardly a note in the paper. There weren't any protests. There wasn't any more the supervisor guy standing out the door, segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. He just did what was the right thing. He said, come on in. Well, mine's confused. Mine's, well, all the rest. We got along. We have to work with people. We have to be ourselves what we want of others. Mr. Caraff, and I'll end with this. I had a discussion with a true conservative, and talking about, he said, there's a difference now. People aren't optimistic. It used to be, we talked about this country, the pie was getting ever bigger, so there'd be enough for everyone. Now we think the pie is just this big. It's not getting any bigger, and we're all scrounging for our little bit. I'm an optimist. I believe we keep getting better. We keep getting better in this country. I don't have to work as hard as I used to. Things are good in this country. We've got our unemployment rate down to 4.6%. We do everything better than everybody else. But that kind of optimism is what drives our country, makes us better. You think back to Jimmy Carter and the Malay speech, and oh my, we've got problems. And then we got Ronald Reagan. Morning in America. The eternal optimism. We can do it. We're America. We're the greatest country in the world. We can do it. When he ended, this was his farewell speech. Let me see. That's the wrong page. Good remember. 1, 2, 3, 4. I've spoken of the shining city all my political life. And I don't know if I ever quite communicated what I saw when I said it. But in my mind, it was a tall, proud city, built on rocks, stronger than oceans, windswept, God blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace. A city with free ports that hum with commerce and creativity. And if there had to be city walls, the walls had doors. And their doors were open to anyone with the will and the heart to get here. That's how I saw it. And see it still. How stands the city? And how stands the city on this winter night? more prosperous, more secure, and happier than it was 8 years ago. But more than that, after 200 years, 2 centuries, she still stands strong and true on the granite ridge, and her glow has held steady no matter what storm. And she's still a beacon, still a magnet for all who must have freedom, for all the pilgrims from all the lost places who are hurting through the darkness towards hope. That was Ronald Reagan. He said, we're still the shining city on the hill. We're going to be attractive to people. Let's get things under control, do that. But let's not fight over meager crumbs. We have it all. And if people want to get here, it's because we are so great. Nobody's trying to break into North Korea. So I just say that I support what we're doing here, and I think there's good justification for it. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. I know it's past my bedtime now, and it shows your dedication and how much you care about this topic and how much you care about this county and the issues that we're facing. One of the things I teach at JMU is the path of least resistance. And so in the Department of Management, what we talk about is setting up systems within the organization to get people to work harder and get people to stay longer with the firm and to perform better. And I think what Mr. Piles was talking about was a well-intended immigration policy that had unintended consequences and actually did the reverse. So yes, in all 3 of those countries, there's some significant issues. I studied those while I was in college as well. But when the word got out that there are better opportunities on this side, that you could get education and medical care that you couldn't get, it encouraged a different type of immigration than what we were experiencing. When I found out about this issue, and I was unaware about it, and I'm responsible for that. Like Mr. Carafa, I went to visit the detention center and had a number of conversations with the children there as well. And you know, I talked, I think, one of the same students or one of the same individuals that one parent had passed away. They knew the other parent was somewhere in a state here in America. And so they went for it, they tried to find that person, and in that process, got captured and got put in the system. There are other stories there. There are sex trafficking cases that have gone through there, where girls have been shipped over here, sometimes sold by their families, sometimes sold by relatives, sometimes just captured on the street. They've been housed in that facility, and I can only imagine the horror that they've gone through to get here and to get in that facility. And then you have other individuals too. 20 of the beds are secure, and so you have individuals that are here illegally, that did break the law, and they're going through a process of deportation and the legal process simultaneously. So those issues exist as well. I think Augusta County needs to be part of the solution. And so one of the stats that Mr. Smith relayed to me was that 50% of the immigrants in that facility request to be deported. And so that is what the law says. The other 50%, as far as we can tell, are put within families, relatives that are responsible for them. And in fact, when those families take in those children, they raise their hand up and they hit immigration status, and they have to go through the immigration process as well. And so one of the things I talked about Mr. Smith and Mr. Cope that I'd love for you to follow up on this. I just wonder, you know, the first 2 years of this program, what happened to most of those kids that went through the immigration process? Were they deported? Were they not deported? Were they placed? I think that's a reasonable quest that I think many of us would be interested in, because there's a 3-year time lag there to see exactly what happened. So again, is Augusta County part of the solution, or are we kind of encouraging the problem through some of the immigration laws? And so I'd like to see that. I think that would be fascinating. I don't think we're going to solve the problem on the local level. I don't think blanket amnesty is something that most of us agree with, and I don't agree with the current immigration policy. Again, the path of least resistance for these immigrants is to break the law, to come across illegally, as opposed to going through the legal system, which takes a decade. It's not secure, and there's some definitely hurdles in there that are issues. I think think all immigrants, whether they're from Central America, there's three countries, should be treated equally. I think, Congress arbitrarily picks the statistics of how many they're going to take from each county. I think that process needs to be reformed. But again, that's nothing that we can directly address from the Board of Supervisors. So I do appreciate the time that you guys came out here and talked to us. Hopefully you're leaving with more information and a better perspective of what's going on in the county. And I think this is an issue that, while we weren't aware of in the last 2.5 years, most of us on this board, this is something that we'll be carefully watching and carefully focusing on for the rest of our term. So thank you again.
I'd like to thank each and everyone that's come out. We're all Americans. And it saddens me that issues like this divide us. But we are a democracy, and we work through the process. And try, if it's not right, we try to fix it. Immigration has been an ongoing problem for years and years. My daughter was doing a report of the 20s and Harding as president. The two big issues during that administration were higher taxes. We got that problem now, and immigration. It's been a problem, it has never been fixed. And our government, they seem to be above the law. They can do anything that they want to, but it comes back down to the local level. We break the law, we get punished for it. They don't have anybody above them to say whether they're right or wrong. They do what they want to do. This situation here, I think, was put in place, contract and things that was here, was put here, American citizens, American kids, but they have went around that agreement that was set up to use the system. And until we can change their ideas and get them to abide by the laws, it's an ongoing process. I understand the kids, I feel sorry for the kids, problems, we understand. But if you look around the world, there's a lot of countries besides these down here that are suffering. Look at most of the countries in Africa. Look at the communist countries. They suffer too. But there's got to be a limit on how many we can let come into this country. Because if we just open up the borders and let everybody freely come, we will not have a country. We look at the rising cost of education. We look at our Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. We have a broken system there now. It's about ready to go bankrupt. Where's it going to be in 20 more years? The Social Security system, I know it was money took out of it, balanced the budget, other means, but the system was set up for working people to have a retirement fund. Those people that started out in the Social Security system started paying, and as they got older, the younger ones would take care of it. But you can overburden the system. You can keep taking and taking, and there's nothing to go around. So we have got to look at the amount amount of people that's coming in. Our population keeps growing. We have unemployment. Yes, we're fortunate to be at a low unemployment rate in the county. Look at the nation as a whole. Our population keeps growing. We keep getting older. Is the system going to be able to sustain itself? Time will tell. We talk about the Bible, what's there. In the end, we have the battle there, Armageddon. There's nothing said about America. Will we be still existing at that time? If we continue down the road that we're going, no, we won't. But right now, we've got to work through this process. If this is a bad agreement we've got with the federal government, the board sees fit to change it, we'll do so. Right now, let's get through the process. We'll go from there. Thank you.
This issue for me has been very difficult because I believe with all my heart teachings that says we're supposed to take care of poor children. But I'm also one that believes in a land of law. My discussions with Mr. Long as to where we were with this process. We have a contract. And I believe in living up to contracts. I had a business. I wrote contracts. And the contracts were good because the people that I was doing work for, they knew what I was going to do for them, and I lived up to that contract. And they paid me according to the contract. We have a contract for what we're doing. In terms of looking out for the community, there's no better way to protect our community than to put them in a facility where we have control, where we know where they are, where they're not on the streets subject to recruitment by gangs and trying to find food. No, I don't agree with the immigration policy. And yes, I do believe there's a difference between legal and illegal immigration. And I truly believe in the word illegal. And believe that their legal immigrants have more rights and should be treated differently than the illegal. But when it comes to dealing with kids, I want to make sure they're dealt with in a compassionate manner. And I think we're trying to do that here. I commend the staff. 5 years ago, when this wasn't a major issue, we're trying to find ways to save our taxpayer dollars. Every representative of every government involved looked at it and said, what's it going to cost? And how can we more efficiently do our job? We didn't change the laws that put kids in the facility. We were overcrowded when we built it, and we had to build it because we were forced to go that direction. But do we come back to the taxpayer and say, whoops, we made a mistake, it's going to cost you an extra nickel on your taxes? No. We found a way to utilize the facility and to benefit our local taxpayers. And I commend the staff for that. I do have very much concerns and support some of the things that some of the other communities that Mr. Long referred to. I don't want the federal government to be able to come into Augusta County or any other county in the jurisdiction that's represented by the Shenandoah Valley Detention Center and say, we're going to place these kids out here in a homeless shelter or in a shelter that we don't control. And I would support any type of resolution by this board to say, you know, we don't want the kids in that situation. But as far as what we're doing right now, I think that we have to live up to the obligations of our contract. I would hope that Congress will find a way to work together and come up with an immigration policy that works, that is not only good for the rich, but that is good for everybody. We should not be accepting people in this country based on how much money they can make. This is a land of opportunity, folks. I grew up in a very poor family and was blessed by this community to be able to own a business that succeeded and provided me with more than I could ever imagine. And I thank the good Lord for that. And I thank the people of this area for that. But I think other people have to have that same opportunity. As I said before, I believe in laws. I believe in obeying the law. I believe in living up to your obligation. And we've made a commitment through 17. And I believe we should honor that commitment to that point.